Good morning, class. We are continuing our work with multiplying and adding and subtracting fractions and whole numbers. And we're going to work on this today. I know this is review, but the more practice you get, the more successful you're going to be when you work independently. Numbers 1 through 12 today, we have problems where you're multiplying fractions, you have problems where you're subtracting fractions, and you have problems where you're adding fractions. Big things to remember. Remember, when you're multiplying fractions, you can cross simplify to make your answer come out easier and much quicker. And when you're adding and subtracting fractions, remember you must have a common denominator. So 2 key things to keep in mind. We'll go ahead and do a practice of each type as we get started here. For number 1, we have 3/4 times 1/8. And we don't have a relationship between 3 and 8 or between 4 and 1. So 3 times 1 is equal to 3, and 8 times 4 is equal to 32. And so we have 3 over 32 for our answer for number 1. We can go ahead and move on and do an example with number 2. So we have a subtraction example. And remember, when you're adding and subtracting fractions, getting a common denominator is necessary. But the other thing I always like to do, as we practiced in Unit 1 and we've been practicing again here in Unit 3, is when you're adding and subtracting, writing them vertically. And so for number 2, we have 2/3, and from that we are subtracting 1/9. All right, we have to identify our denominators. And right now we have 9 and 3, and they are not a common denominator, but we know that 3 is a factor of 9 because 3 times 3 is equal to 9. So we can get both fractions to have a denominator of 9 by taking our top fraction, multiplying the top and bottom both by 3, and we're going to have 2 times 3 is equal to 6, and 3 times 3 is equal to 9. And then we can just move over our 1/9. And now we have a common denominator, and we can just subtract. 6 minus 1 is equal to 5, and our denominator stays the same, and it's 9. So our answer is 5/9 for number 2. We're going to go ahead and complete an addition problem, so you have an example of each type to work with today. We have 1/10, and to that we are adding 1/5. And you can see that we have a denominator of 10 and a denominator of 5, and they are not a common denominator, not the same number. We, however, know that 5 is a factor of 10 because 5 times 2 is equal to 10. So we can get both denominators to be 10 very easily. 5 times 2 is equal to 10. Remember, whatever we do to the denominator, we have to do to the numerator. So 5 times 2 is equal to 10, and 2 times 1 is equal to 2. And we can bring over our 1/10. Now what we have is 1/10 plus 2/10, and 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. Our denominator stays the same, so your answer is 3/10. I'm going to go ahead and head down to number 12 so that we can have an example of one where we have a whole number and we're subtracting a fraction from a whole number. And we've practiced this, but again, what we have here is 10 minus 1/9. And we have a whole number of 10, and if we look at the whole number of 10, we know we're going to need to borrow one whole from that, and that 10 is then going to become a 9. So we have 9. When we take the one whole out of that, we can look at the denominator down here, which is 9, because this is in ninths, and we can take one whole and write it in ninths, and one whole is 9/9. So now what we have is 9, this 9 here is our whole number, 9 and 9/9 minus 1/9. And now we can simply subtract our fractions. 9 minus 1 is equal to 8. Our denominator stays the same, which is 9, and 9 minus nothing is equal to 9. So our answer here for number 12 is going to be 9 and 8/9. You have 5 story problems that you're going to work on today. And number 13 we will complete together for practice. Number 13 reads, Rodrigo's fishbowl holds 7/8 gallon of water. It is now half full. How much water is in it? Well, we need to know how much is 1/2 of 7/8. Well, we know when we have the word of, it means times. So we have 1/2 times 7/8. And we can go ahead and just multiply straight across. 1 times 7 is equal to 7. 2 times 8 is equal to 16. And so we have 7 16ths gallons of water. We're going to go ahead and look down to number 17 and complete that together. A truck was carrying 2 1/8 tons of sand. When it arrived, only 1 1/2 tons of sand were left. How much sand was lost along the way? So this problem is, we started out with an original number, and by the time they traveled, they had lost quite a bit. We have a subtraction problem here. What we have is 2 1/8, and from that we are subtracting 1 1/2, because that's what they were left with, to figure out how much was lost. Again, we have to have a common denominator to be able to complete our subtraction. And we can look at our denominators. We have an 8 and a 2, and we know 2 is a factor of 8 because 2 times 4 is equal to 8. So anything we do to the top, we do to the bottom. I'm going to bring over my whole number right now. 1 times 4 is equal to 4, and then 2 times 4 is equal to 8. And so now what I'm left with is 2 1/8 minus 1 4/8. And now I can see here I cannot take 4 away from 1. So I'm going to have to borrow from my 2 here. Okay, and I'm going to borrow 1 whole, and this 2 is going to become a 1. And now when I borrow 1 whole, to write 1 whole in a fraction form with eighths, it's 8/8. Okay, and so what I'm left with is my whole number, which is 1, and then 8 plus 1 is 9. Denominator stays the same with 8, and I then can subtract my 1 4/8. And I can go ahead and subtract straight down. 9 minus 4 is equal to 5. My denominator stays the same, so it's 8, and 1 minus 1 is nothing. So I'm left with 5/8. So how much sand was lost along the way? 5/8 ton of sand. All right, you're going to go ahead and complete 4 through 11 on your own, and 14, 15, and 16. Make sure you take your time, check your work, and take a picture when you're finished, upload it, and turn it in on Teams. Thank you.